Ladies and gentlemen, you may remember Viola Fletcher. She is one of the Tulsa Race Riot victims that's still alive. And America is such a hateful, evil country that they won't even pay out to a victim that is still living. So it's not about you were never a slave and all that garbage they'd like to get up in our face and say. It's about you're black and we're not going to pay you anything for reparations. But anybody that's not black, we're going to give them reparations. That's what it's all about. That's all. I mean, this is living proof. You got a living person right here that experienced one of the bloodiest massacres that occurred on American soil, and you still won't do anything for her, still won't give her anything. So, y'all, it just goes back to what I said. All of American society, American government, and all of American just as a whole is rooted in racism. And this is living proof. You got a survivor here. She lived through it and you still won't do nothing. It's all about racism. And plus, we already know it is anyway, because the way you question us on reparations, any other group that gets it, you don't question them like that. It's just too damn obvious and in your face. So, Viola Fletcher was 7 years old when the Tulsa massacre occurred. She is now at the ripe old age of 110 years old. Can you imagine the stories this woman could tell that she has seen and experienced in her lifetime? Can you imagine everything that she has gone through? The racism and just trying to live and get through life in this wicked ass nation. That's what she and her family had to do. You know, when I reflect back on my grandparents when they were still living and when they told us what it was like in the Jim Crow South, I just can't imagine how I would have lived through that. You know, it that was just such a horrible time. And I remember when we were children, the lynchings were still going on in the South. Ladies and gentlemen, when my family, because we were from the city, I was from the city of Philadelphia. So I didn't experience seeing newspapers with people hanging. But when we went down south and there was a lynching, it would make the front page. So what my grandmother would do, or some people would be tarred and feathered, and then they would put a sign around them and everything. So when we would come down to the South, my grandmother didn't want us to be traumatized by seeing the newspaper and seeing those things in the paper. So she would take the newspaper and try to hide it. And we would always find it, and you would just it was horrible what was going on down there at the time, and I was just a small child, but I even had sense enough to understand how these mobs were grabbing black people and hanging them and tar and feathering them. Yes, you know, when I was coming up, that stuff was still going on in the South. It was still happening. And so when I look at this 110-year-old woman, ooh, just the things, I bet you could probably take her life story and make 2 to 3 movies out of it, for real. So when the Tulsa massacre occurred, she was only 7 years old when she heard about a black man being accused of assaulting a white woman on an elevator, which sparked the massacre. And now she is over a century years old. That is just crazy. And she is the oldest living Tulsa survivor. Now, one man died maybe about a year or two ago. That was her brother. That was her brother, her younger brother. And I think he made it until like 102 years old. Yeah, that's her brother. Longevity in that family. Despite the fact that these folks have gone above and beyond to try to make us feel like you don't live as long as us. Yeah, well, that ain't panning out to be true. I bet if I pulled 10 of my subscribers, they could probably tell you about people in their family that's 90, 100 years old. Many of us have that in our family. I do. Okay. I do. So you can miss us with that. You don't live as long as we do. And one troll tried to come in here and say that. So I said, let me go look this up. Y'all, it is barely 3 years. Man, if you can live 20 to 30 years longer than us, then I would think that was a big deal. 3 years, go somewhere and sit your ass down. So, anyway, ladies and gentlemen, June 1st, 1921, Viola, her last name was Ford back then, Viola Ford, and she was 7 years old, June 1st, 1921. And she said she has lived out that riot in her head all throughout her life. Can you imagine the trauma of what she saw that day? Seeing the dead bodies and everything. I mean, that had to be very traumatic for a 7-year old. So I certainly can understand how she would have lived through that trauma for the rest of her life. So she said the riot jumped off at the courthouse. And it's always the same way. That's how they start these riots trying to fake up a scenario, and it's always the white woman. It just over and over and over, all of these stories, the white woman said this, and the riot started, the white woman said that, and this person was hung, and the white woman said, come on, y'all can give people a headache with that mess. So anyway, this happened in Tulsa's Greenwood district. Now, there were several Black Wall Streets, ladies and gentlemen, but it pretty much ended the same way. And it just goes to show you one thing about Black Wall Street: it is a shining example of our people pulling themselves up by the bootstraps. Do you know they were prosperous for 15 straight years? And when you look at the financial situation here in America, they can barely get through a decade without having financial issues. America's going through some serious financial issues now. Now, the game they try to play is everything is falling apart financially. Housing is crazy. Don't say the word recession. Don't say the word recession. That's the little silly game. These people are silly. They are silly as hell. So anyway, so they think if they don't say the word recession, that we don't think we're in a recession. This is how their minds work. So 15 straight years of prosperity. That's what Black Wall Street was. And it can't be matched to this very day. None of these other communities out here have come close to matching it. Not even close. So, and don't let them come and troll telling you they've matched it. They're lying. No, they haven't. No, they haven't. All you got to do is look at the financial crashes and recessions all throughout history in this country. They have never matched it to this very day. So she speaks of the violence. that occurred that day. She remembers. And the fires, they had set ablaze 35 city blocks. You can see the pictures of it. That's one thing. They had no shame in what they did. So there's a lot of documentation. There's a lot of photographs of events because they had no shame about it at all. So 35 blocks set ablaze because they were jealous of black people living better than them. And hundreds of people were killed. They're lying about the numbers. That's one thing. Whenever there were riots and towns burned down, they always try to downplay the numbers. So you can forget about getting real numbers from these folks. They got a serious inability to give real numbers. That's why we've been 13% of the population since 1860, because they have a serious inability to tell the truth about the numbers. So anyway, hundreds, probably thousands were injured according to historians. And to this very day, they pretend like they can't find these mass graves. And I believe they're lying about that too. I think they know exactly where these graves are, but they're playing dumb like they don't know where nothing is. And I absolutely do not believe them. And it's only because of the history, y'all. You know, the reason why we don't see slave cemeteries is because they blew them up. They bulldoze the cemetery, and they build houses and parking lots and roads on top of those cemeteries. So you don't ever see them. But I believe they know exactly where they are. I really do. So in 1932, Viola Ford, she married Robert Fletcher, and they relocated to California, and they worked at the shipyards during World War II, where she said she worked as an assistant welder and placed steel slabs to form ships. After the war, the Fletchers, they went back to Oklahoma. They settled down and raised their three children. She said she literally can see this massacre occurring every single day in her mind. She can still see it crystal clear of what happened. Yeah, I bet she can. That's a very traumatic thing to live through. So she is living proof. You got a survivor that's living, and this government is so evil. They won't even give her reparations, and she lived through it. She and one other survivor, they're the only two that are living. And two people, and you still won't give reparations to those two people. So it's not about you didn't live through this. You weren't a slave. It's not about that. It's about racism. You hate us to the point where you don't feel you have to pay for the atrocities that this place has caused us. We didn't do these things to ourselves. We're not even doing it to ourselves to this very day. This place is wicked and evil. And if you're non black and they did something to you, it's okay to give reparations. If you're black and they did evil to you, no, don't pay them nothing. It goes back to what I told you. All of America is rooted in racism. It is to this very day. They act like after slavery, nothing else happened to us. That's how they try to play it, and it's just not working. It's not working, and it's not gonna work. But they keep trying to take you down a path that is just not working. It's not working. It is not working that you keep saying we're not slaves, but you ignore all of the other atrocities that happened after slavery. So, you know what? The next time you want to say that to us, don't. Just miss us all. For real. So, y'all, well, congratulations to Viola Fletcher for 110 years of life on this planet. And she debunks all of that BS about us not living long. Okay. And, I bet you if you came in my comment section, the majority of the people in my comment section can tell you about people in their families in their 90s and over 100 years old. I certainly can. And I know I'm far from the only one within our community. Nice try, though. Nice try. Y'all, please tell me what you think about this story. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace, family.